All right, you guys, I am so excited to be back. It's been a very long break. I think it's been about 8 weeks since I have dropped a new podcast, and I'm so excited. It's been the first break that I've ever taken on the podcast. I've been doing it for 5 years and been very, very consistent with it. I'm so proud of myself for doing so, but it's been a good 8 week break, and it feels so refreshing. Still feels so refreshing to be back. And I wanted to share some things that I have learned during this time with you guys. But first off, a couple things. Some of you guys know this because you're watching this right now. Yes, those that are listening to the podcast, we are now doing a YouTube channel. So if you are one of those people that likes to, watch things on YouTube, to see people, there's such a benefit in that, I think. So if you are curious about that, we are doing this podcast now on the YouTubes, as well as we'll be putting up some other trainings, some other shorts, some other valuable content for you guys there on the podcast. But also, I wanted to announce something that I am so, so excited about. And that is that I have created, I'm going to call it my baby, I guess you could say, but we're calling it the Calm Connection Project. Now, a lot of you guys know about my Calm method when it comes to emotions, but I have created this new program project. I'm still kind of playing around with what it actually looks like, but that's what we're calling it for right now. But in my time away and really, really slowing down and deciding what it is that I wanted and how I wanted to serve you guys best, this baby idea, this baby project was born. And there's been a gap. So let me kind of just tell you my backstory with this. There's been a gap that I've seen in the coaching industry for a while now, and some of which I have seen and tackled in my own ways, right? That's kind of what you guys have noticed. A lot of you guys have noticed the pivot that I've been making more into the emotional side of things and doing inner child work, doing somatic work. And then the other part of it that I've seen is around investing and putting your money and commitments into, getting some coaching, getting some support. And that's what I wanted to kind of also bridge with this new project. I have never really agreed with the coaching industry and their desire to charge these large amounts of money to get support and ultimate healing for people. While I know money is a tool, right? And it is needed to provide different things in our lives. Like I need that money in order for me to keep this podcast going, in order for me to support and get a team and to run the background that I need to have as far as even supporting my family, right? So money is a tool that is definitely needed and it does help. I just don't agree that it needs to be at a price point that for some people is really too much for them to be able to move forward with. And to me, what I've noticed is this narrative that, well, then just coach them around that. If they are truly committed, then they will overcome whatever those blocks are in order to get the support that they need. And I bought into this idea for a little bit because of that's kind of the background and where I got trained is they really push that narrative a lot, that you coach people around their objectives, around money, and use it as a way to really gauge their commitment with coaching. And again, while I do believe that there is probably some blocks for some people around their investing, that even spending $20 or even spending $100 on coaching can be a lot for people, I do think there's some things that you can work on around that. I also don't believe that it needs to be something that you have to get a credit card for, or that it needs to be $10,000 in order for you to prove that you are invested in your development and getting that healing that you need. And if you don't, then you're just, kind of out of luck. So I've really struggled with what that can look like to give the ability to have access to more coaching and more support for people while also creating a place for actual transformation. Because even masterminds, even courses, even coaching groups, I think there's a gap that I see in there is that you're getting a lot of information in masterminds. And I wouldn't say every mastermind, but the majority that I have been a part of. And even in the coaching groups, there's a lot of information that you're given. Courses, that's all it is getting content. There's not a lot of actual transformation that's happening. And so this new project is nothing like I have seen out there. And it's ever evolving. That's one of the things is I'm not looking for perfection before I launch this thing, is I'm willing to start ideas, start going in a direction and be willing to pivot and to change along with you before I feel like, in my mind, especially all this last year, is I thought I needed to work out all the kinks before I brought this to you. But that's what I kind of love about this new idea is that knowing it's a project and that you're a project, right? Your transformation is not a destination. It is a project. And so as we continue to grow, as we continue to work through things, I wanted to have a place to provide that in a way that was accessible to more people. And what I noticed as far as coaching goes is that the goal that I think, the overall goal that I see for most people is more connection and more transformation. Not more information, but more transformation. If you've been in the self-development world for years, which I think majority of you guys here have been, especially if you've been following me for the last little bit, you are very familiar with the vast amount of tools that are out there. And yet I hear over and over again that most of you guys are still feeling very, very stuck, still feeling like you're not very fulfilled, or that you're not navigating through things, or that the same problems keep popping up over and over again, right? If that is you, this project is for you. This program is for you. Maybe you are great with aligning around your thoughts, right? You understand them, you become aware of them, and you tell yourself that you know your emotions. I hear that all the time, I'm like, oh, I know what I'm feeling. I know what I'm experiencing in this moment. But really, the problems, the lack of awareness is still there. There still is those gaps in knowing who you are. There still is gaps in really knowing what you want. Is there still gaps in your relationships and feeling truly connected to yourself, to your emotions, to, I think, even God in a lot of respects, to fulfillment, to knowing what the future holds for you. There's a lot of lack of connection for a lot of people. And it can be so frustrating. And I would also offer very, very lonely at times, because sometimes you feel like there's something wrong with you, that you're not getting what everybody's telling you should be getting at this time, right? I hear this from clients all of the time. And there's nothing more frustrating than putting in all this time and all this effort to feel like you're just on this hamster wheel to nowhere. And I hear sometimes that we quit, right? We're just like, I give up. I'm tired. I'm burnt out on this coaching or this self-development or on this transformation. So we walk away for a little bit, but I think really we still have this nagging, this knowing that there is something out there. There's something that's calling to you to get to where you ultimately want to go, that there's a possibility for more. And sometimes I don't even know what that is, but I get it. I totally get that. That's where I was for so long, doing the work. I love doing thought work to start, right? That's where I started in this whole journey, but doing the work, but lacking the true results, lacking getting something different, still feeling very, very lost, still feeling very, very empty. And now here, we're kind of at the beginning of this new place, right? We're at 2024, a brand new year yet again. And everyone, I think, for the most part, is talking about change, right? We talk about transformation and change and goals and setting things and trying things again. And I think for most of the people that I talk to, they're very good at setting goals, but they probably feel very, very defeated because, like we were just mentioning, they aren't getting the results that they ultimately want. And so they kind of give up, right? They kind of give up because they don't think they're ever going to get the results that they actually desire. Well, I want to tell you that with this project, this year is going to be different. The reason that you're listening to this podcast is because you truly do believe in possibility. You do believe that there's more available to you. There's something that you're listening to in this podcast, especially probably around the emotion work and healing work and inner child work, you do align with in some way, but maybe you're stuck in the how. Maybe you're stuck in that gap that we've been talking about of maybe investing, maybe in time and effort. And so this is the perfect timing for you. So let me just give you a couple of details that are going to be happening. On January 26th, yes, that's the end of this month. I know it's totally different than what most people do. They do it at the beginning of the year, beginning of the month, and they kind of launch into something. But I mean, who says we have to gear up at the beginning of the year in the first place, right? It doesn't matter when we do this. I think we put so much time and effort into, oh, we have to start fresh. Oh, we have to have it all figured out at the beginning of the year, right? At the very beginning of the month. So no, we're going to get kids back into school. We're going to get things going. And then on January 26th, which is a Friday, we're going to do a 3-hour workshop together. This is completely free. This is to anybody that wants to be involved in this. This is a gift that I want to give to those of you that have been in my world for a long time. And whether you move forward with going into the Calm Connection project, that doesn't matter. I want to give you so much value in this 3-hour workshop. This workshop is all about getting some clarity. It's about giving you some tools and some value to really look at this year in a new way, to look at connection in a whole new way. I find so many times we can see the workbooks, we can see the different, ideas around there about setting goals. But again, left to our own devices, we can get stuck and we can have those limitations that come up that ultimately stop us from getting the clarity that we actually need and taking the steps forward. So this workshop is a jump start into that. We're going to work together for 3 hours. We're going to be able to see each other. We're going to be able to talk through things. If you don't want to be seen, it's totally fine too. You can turn off your camera, but it's a way for you to have access to coaching in real time, to work through those limitations that may have been coming up for you and to work through them, to get the clarity and the connection that you need going into 2024 to start with. So if you are curious about that, then you're going to want to sign up in the link below. It's completely free. I encourage you guys to get your friends and your family involved in this, have them all come, have them all join, get on the same page together. But also on January 26th, we're going to be talking about moving forward with the Calm Connection project. And you're going to learn all about it on this workshop. So that's why you want to attend. Again, the workshop is free, but you're also going to learn about the next possible steps that you can take with the Calm Connection project. And I promise you, it is not like what you've probably seen in the coaching world. It is accessible for everybody. And it is something that I think is really going to be a powerful tool for so many of you going into this next year. So we're going to discuss all of that. And I don't want you to miss that. We're going to be crafting your brand new year in 2024. It is 9 to 12 Mountain Time, and it's going to be awesome. So sign up below this podcast. Again, send it to anybody and everybody, and we will be talking about this new project on that workshop. I am so dang excited about it. The goal is really going to be helping people heal and to connect this year. So, and I think this can really be a conduit to connection to yourself, to others, to your spirituality, to your business. And there will be a special offer to those that attend live on that Friday. And all of it, again, will be given on that workshop. And if you can't attend live, don't worry about it. Still sign up so you can get the replay. But this year is going to be amazing. And I want you to join me. I want you to be along for the ride. So if you ever wanted to do coaching, been curious about emotion work, wondering, how you might be able to change the direction that your life is going, then please attend. You have to attend. I promise you, it's going to change everything for you. It's going to be very value packed. It's going to be a fire hose of information, but fire hose of value that you can watch the replays over and over again if you need to. So again, share the link with your family and your friends, get people there. All right. I just felt like I fire hosed a whole bunch of information at you, but I really wanted to talk to you just briefly for a second before we get into this new year about resting and about breaks. It's something I've actually talked about quite a bit on this podcast over the last little bit about slowing down, doing less, being more. And this last year, as some of you guys might know from listening or seeing my stuff on Instagram, I've really been talking about the things that I've learned from this year. And a lot of that has come from the word that I chose, which I always like to choose a word for the year. 2 years ago was let go, which had a lot of powerful lessons from that. This last year, 2023, was all about ease and how powerful that was. And this next year, I'm going into connection, hence the Calm Connection project, which is what I'm leaning into fully. But this last year, I've really had to learn what ease looks like when things feel very unfamiliar, feel very unknown. And it has led to where I got to this place where I was feeling so out of control, very out of control. A lot of things happened at the beginning of November, it was actually right after the last podcast that I launched, that really kind of crippled me for a little bit. And so this break was not necessarily planned. I planned to continue with it, but I kind of leaned into the opportunity that was before me. And so I want to give you guys this analogy that I recently heard that was very fitting for what I was choosing to embrace as I kind of leaned into this break a little bit. So let's just say you are a caterpillar, and you are a caterpillar that's walking along on this stick, right? And as you're walking along, you are trying to get to the other side of this big, huge branch, or maybe even you're trying to get to a new tree, right? You see this perspective that you want to get to, and your goal is to get to the end of the branch or get to this other tree. And so you start traveling down this branch. And as you start going, you hit a block of some kind. Maybe it's just a stick going the wrong direction. Maybe it's a bunch of trees. Maybe it's, or leaves, sorry, a bunch of leaves. It's something that's blocking you in some way. Now, typically, there's two options that we have. Now, some of you guys might be the type that sees the block and was like, oh, yeah, this is a sign. I'm not meant to go this way. So we kind of abandon the idea. We turn around and we just quit, right? Maybe not even just quit. We just turn around and we just decide, yeah, that's not for me anymore. That block is trying to tell me something. Now, if you're more like me, which I think a lot of you guys are, you look at that, you see the block and you're like, oh, well, you know what? I got to figure out how I can navigate through this. I got to push through this. What can I do? We get into problem solving mode, right? How do I get over this? How do I get through this? We put more effort into it. However, I want to offer that 2024, there's another alternative. There's another thing that we can be doing in this time. And that is to attach ourselves to the block. And I say that without being like so attached to it, but just like letting ourselves sit in that place, sit in that block and be patient, slowing down and allowing things to just unravel where you are. And those might be thoughts, those might be emotions, those might be just some stories that have been holding you back for a long time. But the caterpillar is hitting this block, and the opportunity is just to attach ourselves to it. And then ultimately, what happens to a caterpillar when it attaches to a stick or to anything? It transforms. It becomes it gets into a cocoon and eventually becomes a beautiful butterfly with more freedom, more ability, more experiences to actually go where it wants to go. And that is what I noticed on my journey. I could have done all the things to push through this really uncomfortable place that I hit. There was a block that I was not expecting, and I could have just pushed through it. I could have, noticed my thoughts, but it's suddenly like, that's stupid, that's crazy. Instead, I allowed myself to do the thing that I usually don't let myself do, which is to just slow down, to lean into the uncomfortable, to get curious. And to the biggest thing that I noticed was to allow myself to heal and to transform. So instead of pushing through this really, really painful time in my life, I let myself grieve. And I think that's something that a lot of us need more of, is the opportunity in the space to grieve. And again, grief is, obviously for when we lose somebody, but I think it's also just grieving expectations, grieving what we thought was supposed to be, grieve, situations that didn't go like we expected them to, grieve the pain that I was feeling both personally and in my business. And I didn't know how long I was going to let myself be there. I think so many times we put a time limit on it of like, okay, well, I'll let myself sit here for a week, or I'll let myself sit here for however long. But that was another thing that I noticed was holding me back. And so instead, I just let myself sit with the pain, but I didn't want to push through it. And I wanted to honor all that was coming up. Burnouts happen when we try to move through that pain with an intention, with judgment of like, I should not be in this place. This is taking too long. We push through that pain in our bodies too. We push through for the sake of productivity, right? Thinking like, I have to, people are waiting on me, or I have to prove something. And that has definitely been some of my narrative up into this point, is that I've got to keep going. I got to do my podcast because people are expecting it. Only the good coaches stay consistent with this. I've got to keep providing value out there. And so instead, I think it's important for us to, and this is kind of the awareness that I had, is I wanted to create a new narrative that people can be coaches, people can create content, people can be very, very productive, but also can take breaks at times. We need more people being willing to share in rest, in taking breaks. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I don't see very many people, especially in the Instagram world, podcast world, different places. I don't see very many people taking breaks. They always seem like they're on all of the time, that they never have a hard day, or if they do, they have the perfect way to navigate through it, right? They have all the answers and they have the checklist to tell you how to work through your hard times. And for me, it can be so exhausting to see. It can be totally exhausting to see that everybody else has it figured out. And I think it's an expectation that you've got to figure it out to a certain point, right? That you can work through this. And I think the other part that I noticed for myself is that this idea that they've healed from everything, right? I notice these content creators that are constantly moving through things and they have the checklist, they've healed through everything they need to. They already have it all figured out. They have all the tools that they need. And for me, that's very, very defeating, because as a coach, I'm like, oh, I've got to have all the answers before I can share. And what I am leaning into and what I want to do is change the narrative. Like, I don't have this all figured out. I don't have this all. I'm not healed from everything, but I will share in my journey, which will be so powerful, I think, for you to know that you don't have to have this all figured out in order for you to take steps forward, in order for you to start healing. You don't need to heal from everything. You don't need to know everything. You don't have to implement everything. You don't have to use every tool. You don't have to be perfect with it all. That just becomes so daunting. So for me, I am like, I want to be in the example of someone who has a successful business, who does have some really good relationships, who, is still figuring things out, is still healing, is still implementing different things, but also gives myself permission to step away and to like let everything fall apart, to not know what everything means, to feel completely exhausted, to allow myself to just prioritize myself, my rest, and my healing. So I want you to see that. And we want to normalize more of that. 2024 is all about stepping more into ourselves, not pushing, not proving, not having it all perfect. I think it's more about being able to take a break and stepping into and connecting more to ourselves. And that's what I'm hoping to help you guys with a little bit more as I continue to figure that out for myself a little bit more. I really didn't tell anybody that I was taking a break. And I think sometimes we feel like we have to let people know or even know exactly what that means to take a break in order for us to be able to do so. We have to give an excuse. We have to get permission. But no, I want to offer to you guys that you do not have to have those things. You can just be a priority. You can just make a decision that I'm going to take a break in whatever that looks like. It doesn't mean stopping everything in the world. It could, totally could, but it doesn't have to look like that. But taking care of yourself is a good enough reason. And instead, so many people look for everybody else to validate them first, to get permission from everybody else, and then they feel stuck. So, and I notice those feelings, by the way. I totally notice them. But this time, like I said, instead of trying to work through them, getting over the stick or getting over the block, I just sat with them. I noticed the thoughts of like, people are going to not see me. People are going to, judge me, or people are going to whatever. I just sat with them and I didn't fix them. I allowed them just to come up. I allowed myself just to heal, to feel all the emotions that came up with it. You guys, there's not one thing out there that works for everybody. We've seen this in the diet industry. We're starting to notice that narrative shift there, right? Like there's not one holy grail diet system out there. So why do we think that's any different in the self-development world? There's not a one size fits all. There's not. People need different things at different stages. People need different things because of the experiences they've been through. This has been so uncomfortable for me to acknowledge. However, I realize even more the power of just letting ourselves to sit and to just feel uncomfortable. I learned that all tools, and I'm still learning tools. That's the thing, is like I'm not done learning. It's not that I'm not going to try and learn things. But all tools, all different modalities that are out there serve a purpose. One thing that I find in the coaching industry is different themes that show up, right? And everybody buys into like, oh, that's the thing that I need to be coaching on right now, or that's the thing that I need to get in the next training on. And it becomes a kind of, again, like the holy grail of like, oh, okay, well, everybody's doing thought work. I got to learn the thought work. Or I noticed this, again, the switch over to the emotion side of things, or trauma work, or healing work. And again, I think all of those modalities are powerful. EDMR, somatic therapy, inner child work, so many different modalities. But instead of trying to claim that Chantel has the one thing that is going to solve it for everybody, I think is totally unfair. And I think any coach that tries to prove that is totally unfair because it's not true. I think more often, or at least the shift that I want to go into, is understanding that coaching, self-development is more like a gym. It's more of that I have these different machines. I have these different exercises, these different things that you can try to work because you're working on different things in your life, right? I think of like if you go to the gym and you're working on back day, there's going to be different tools. There's going to be different things that you're going to lift in order to really strengthen your back. Same thing with your core, same thing with your arms. The same thing happens in our self-development. When I would taken this break for a little bit, the tool that I noticed for myself that I really needed was to work on healing. It was a big one for me, inner child work, but also working on some of just the basic thought work, noticing and questioning and diving deeper into the thoughts that I've been having. And so again, I don't think it's, oh, this is the thing that you need. You need to work on your inner child work. Oh, you need trauma healing, or you need whatever. I don't know what you need, but I love offering the different ways, the different tools in order for us to have different perspective, being able to question things, to be more responsible for the person that we want to be. All of it works, you guys. All of it does. Instead of thinking you have to find the holy grail, instead, let's just lean into trusting ourselves, learning to trust ourselves with the tools that we already have and using them, putting them into practice. I needed that reminder in this time off. I was constantly looking for the thing that no one else offered. Instead, I look at it as not all things work, and it's just learning to trust yourself a little bit more. I think, let me back up on that. All things do work, but also they also do not work. It's kind of like going on the extremes of all or nothing, right? I think everything works, and I think nothing works at the same time. So it's more learning to trust yourself that you will know what you need at that time. Inner child work works at different times in our lives. Working on model work, working on trauma work, all of it. It's a multifaceted tool system that we need to embrace. A lot of us need healing around growing up, not feeling good enough, worried what other people are going to be thinking about you. We need work on all of that. I learned that in order to let new things in, I had to be able to surrender my control, because that's ultimately what it was, is I was trying to control my healing, which is just so crazy. I wanted the perfect way in order to get there. And in order for me to step into this new place that I wanted to go, I had to surrender that control. Now, hear me when I say this. I still want my control, you guys. I still want it. It's still something that I have to constantly be aware of. But I noticed that the more I use my heart instead of my mind, things are different. That's one thing, again, that I have learned so much in this time away. My heart's language is so different than my mind. My mind wants control. My mind wants to know exactly what's going to happen. My mind wants the perfect tool in order for me to do this. It wants the checklist in order for me to know that I'm going the right direction. But my mind is tired. And my mind is in a place where it's like, okay, I've done all that I can do. Again, I'm still learning, still growing. I love my mind. I love my thinking. But my heart is so different. And when I lean into my heart and I learn to hear it, to feel it, it's totally different experience. This time for me was about healing. It was about connecting to my body. It was about slowing down. It was about getting to know me in a way that I haven't let myself do in a long time. And I didn't listen to a single podcast during this time. I let my mind rest, because I noticed for myself when I am listening to podcasts sometimes, it's great, but it gives me more ideas and it gets me right back into trying to do the work. So I listened to music. I was outside a lot more. Honestly, it was so delightful just to take a break from everything. I realized how much I did to fill my time before. Even when obviously my idea is to be very much at ease this year. That was my word, was ease. But even with that ease, I was still filling my time with consumption, with even doing coaching. I was doing so much coaching on myself, which I think can be used against ourselves at times, right? But slowing down and doing it in this way felt so foreign to me. People were saying all of the time during this holidays how busy they were. I mean, I heard that over and over again. And it was crazy to me that I did not feel the same way at all. And that was very uncomfortable for me. Like, I actually was very tempted to echo what they were saying. They were like, oh my gosh, I haven't even done my Christmas shopping. I just like all these things. And I was done. I had my shopping done. But with so much ease. But it was very uncomfortable for me to say that. There was no real stress. There was no real plans. And it just felt so weird to me just to sit with my kids and watch TV. I mean, we even binged The Blacklist. Have you guys seen The Blacklist? It's such a good show. Actually, I only got to season 3 and I'm kind of done with it already, but that's typically how I go. But for like 3 days, which is totally unheard of, I sat with my kids and we just watched it. And it was the weirdest thing. It felt so foreign to me, but we crocheted, we puzzled. I just spent time having deep conversations, more time outside. It was so meaningful for me to have those connection points with myself and with my kids, and noticing it being uncomfortable, noticing myself wanting to, fix it all of the time. But it was so good for me to realize, like, there's nothing to fix. Life is meant to be happening all of the time, not just when we fix things, not when we have it all figured out. Life happens all the time, unintentionally, intentionally. And so it's learning to embrace more of that. and trusting myself a little bit more. So now I'm in this new place that I'm back. I'm excited. I'm gearing up for this 2024 year, and I'm ready to re-engage and do it in a healthy and whole self way. We don't rest so that we can quit, right? We don't rest so that we are more exhausted and resentful when we come back. I think I kind of started that way because of where I was at and I wasn't letting myself heal. No, we do it so that we can recharge and re-engage in our lives. Remind yourself of that. When you're taking a break, it's to rest and to re-engage. Resting is so good for us. This break was everything for me. To end the year, getting to know myself was everything for me. It's so nice for me to remind myself of who I am when I'm not coaching, when I'm not doing a podcast, and that who I am only matters to me, really, and to my Heavenly Father, but to me. And it's so good to get to know myself in that place. So beneficial to rest and to play and to, heal a little bit more. So I encourage you guys to do the same thing for yourself. But if you're stuck on that, you're listening to this and you're like, oh, yeah, sounds good for you, but any buts that come up at all, then I encourage you guys to sign up for that January 26th workshop. Come, let's craft your year, bring up your limitations, and let's gear up for that Calm Connection project that will be starting just the week after. I think it's February 2nd is when the doors are opening up to that new project. But come join me. And if you like today's episode, please screenshot it, share it on Instagram, give me a shout out, and I will definitely reciprocate that. I'll shout you back. But come join us on that training. Let's make 2024 an amazing year. It's everything that you want it to be. All right, I'll talk to you guys very soon.